They thought knocking out a black girl's twin sister in a crowded school hallway would make them legends, but all it did was start a 3-minute countdown to their destruction. While the bullies bragged over her unconscious body, the one man they should have feared was already on his way: her father, the district official with the power to end every future they ever dreamed of. And when he arrived, he didn't raise his voice. He simply fired them one by one right in front of everyone who once feared them. The final bell rang through hallway A like a warning shot, sharp, metallic, and far too loud for what was about to unfold. Students spilled from classrooms in a chaotic stream of backpacks, chatter, and footsteps. But for Zuri and her twin sister Zaya, it felt like walking into a storm they weren't prepared for. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the blue lockers that lined the corridor. It looked like an ordinary school day ending, until it didn't. Zuri walked a step ahead of her sister, her binder pressed tightly against her chest, her eyes fixed forward. Zaya followed, quieter, cautious, as always, watching her twin's back. But even from here, she could sense the tension thickening in the air. Students whispered and shifted aside, clearing a path in a way that made Zaya's stomach drop. People didn't move like that unless something bad was coming. Then she saw them. The wolf pack. Chase, the ringleader with a grin sharp enough to cut glass. Logan, the muscle of the group with arms crossed like he owned the hallway. And Brett, always lurking behind them, always recording, always laughing. They stepped into the center of the hallway as if it belonged to them. And in many ways, it did. Everyone knew it. Everyone feared it. Everyone avoided them except Zuri. Move, Zuri muttered under her breath, hoping they would at least let them pass today. But Logan shifted his weight, planting himself directly in their path. Well, look who's here, Logan drawled, his voice dripping arrogance. The twins, Zuri stiffened. We're not in the mood, Logan. Chase laughed loudly, the sound echoing off the lockers. Since when are we asking about your mood? Zaya tugged Zuri's sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. Let's just go another way. But it was too late. Logan stepped closer, invading their space, towering over them. No, he said, smirking. We're having fun. Zuri's eyes flashed. She hated being intimidated. Back off, a few students gasped. No one talked to Logan like that. Not unless they wanted trouble. Chase's grin widened. Brett raised his phone instinctively, already recording. They smelled entertainment. And Logan, he snapped. In one sudden movement, he shoved Zuri with both hands, a violent, merciless push meant to hurt. Time fractured. Zuri's body hit the lockers with a metallic crash that silenced the entire hallway. Her head struck the corner edge with a sickening thud. The world seemed to freeze as her binder flew from her hands, papers scattering like white birds. Then her body crumpled to the floor. Her eyes shut instantly. No movement, no sound, nothing. Zuri! Zaya screamed, her voice cracking in terror. She dropped to her knees beside her sister, shaking her shoulders frantically. Zuri's head fell to the side, limp. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale. Wake up! Please, Zuri, wake up! Zaya's voice shattered into sobs. Around them, students watched with wide eyes, but didn't step forward. Fear held them in place. The wolf pack's shadow was too powerful. No one dared intervene, no one except Zaya. Logan snorted. She's fine. She's just dramatic. Chase zoomed the camera in closer. Nah, this is good. This is content, he laughed. Actually laughed while Zuri lay unconscious on the floor. Zaya whipped her head toward him, tears streaking down her cheeks. Stop recording. What is wrong with you? But Chase only shrugged. If she wanted privacy, she shouldn't have fallen like that. Not our fault, she's weak. Zaya clenched her fists. She felt helpless, terrified, furious all at once, but she couldn't fight them. Not like this. Not with Zuri unresponsive. Somebody get help, she yelled toward the frozen crowd. Silence. No one moved. Students lowered their heads, avoiding eye contact, pretending they didn't hear, choosing safety over morality. The wolf pack smirked, Fear was their currency. Chase lowered the phone only long enough to spit out, "What? Nobody? Guess nobody cares." Zaya swallowed hard as panic clawed up her throat. She pressed her ear to Zuri's chest. There was breathing, but faint. Too faint. "Zuri, stay with me," she whispered desperately. Her hands shook uncontrollably. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She felt like the walls were closing in. She tried again to rally help. She hit her head. She could die, please. But the hallway remained still. Chase leaned against a locker, arms crossed. "Relax. She'll wake up. Eventually." Logan shrugged. "Or not. Not my problem." Zaya's fear snapped into rage. "You did this. You hurt her." Logan rolled his eyes. "She bumped into me." "Don't twist it," Zaya glared. "I saw you push her." "Prove it." Logan scoffed. Brett tilted his phone toward her. "Yeah, what's your evidence?" "You crying?" Zaya stared at them, horrified. "You're monsters." "No," Chase corrected. "We're realists." That was the moment Zaya realized no one here would help her. Not the students, not the teachers who hadn't shown up, not the school that always looked the other way. No one except one person. Her father. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone. She dialed him with shaking fingers. It rang once. "Dad." She choked out, sobbing uncontrollably. "It's Zuri, she's not waking up." Logan pushed her. "They're laughing." "Dad, please, please come." Her father's voice turned to steel instantly. "Where are you?" "H hallway A. I'm on my way. Do not move from your sister." Zaya nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Please hurry." "I will," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Nobody touches my daughters." As the call ended, Zaya clutched the phone to her chest. A storm was coming, one the wolf pack had no idea they had triggered. Chase raised his eyebrows, amused. "You calling Daddy? What's he gonna do? Cry with you?" Zaya wiped her tears, her breathing shaky but determined. She didn't answer them. She didn't need to. Her father would. And when he arrived, nothing in this hallway would ever be the same again. Zaya held Zuri close, tears soaking her sister's hair, as distant footsteps echoed from the far end of the building, slow, heavy, and filled with something the wolf pack should have feared. Because in that moment, the disaster was no longer the fall. It was what her father was about to do next. The hallway still hummed with shock, but Zaya couldn't sit still any longer. Her hands were trembling, her pulse pounding in her ears. She had to get help, real help. Not from terrified students or the monsters still standing there smirking. She gently laid Zuri's head against her backpack to cushion it, whispering, "I'll be right back," then sprinted down the hallway toward the nearest office. Her shoes slapped sharply against the linoleum floor as she burst through the door of the assistant principal's office. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, illuminating stacks of paperwork and the tall, stern figure of Dean Hargrove, a woman in her late 40s, with perfectly ironed slacks and an expression permanently carved into disapproval. "Dean Hargrove," Zaya gasped, nearly out of breath. "My sister, she's hurt." Logan pushed her. "She hit her head. She's not waking up." For the first time since Zaya had known her, Hargrove's face flickered with something like concern, though it lasted barely a heartbeat. "Slow down," she ordered, standing up. "Take me to her." Zaya didn't slow. She turned and dashed back down the hallway, with Hargrove following briskly behind. For a moment, Zaya hoped that help was finally coming. Someone would see the truth. Someone would finally stand up to the wolf pack. But when they rounded the corner, Zaya froze. The wolf pack had moved Zuri. Instead of lying unconscious near the lockers where she fell, Zuri was now seated propped up clumsily against a water fountain, her head slumped to the side, her hair covering the injury. Brett had tossed her binder beside her to look like she'd dropped it while bending down. Logan crouched beside her, pretending to check on her like a concerned friend. And Chase always, the actor, put on a show. "There she is," Chase said loudly the moment Hargrove arrived, as if he'd been waiting. "We found her complaining about stomach cramps. She must have fainted from the pain." He shook his head with fake sympathy. Poor girl, Logan added eagerly. Yeah, we told her to go to the nurse, but she said she felt dizzy. Next thing we knew, she slid down the wall. Hargrove turned to Zaya. Is this true? What? Zaya's voice cracked with disbelief. No, they shoved her. Logan pushed her so hard she flew into the lockers. She hit her head. That's why she's not waking up. Chase widened his eyes innocently. Head? No one touched her head. Did they, guys? Logan shook his head confidently. Brett did too. Zaya looked around desperately for the crowd of onlookers who had witnessed everything, but they were gone. The hallway had emptied the moment she left, leaving her alone with wolves and an adult who couldn't or wouldn't see their teeth. She's lying, Chase said smoothly, trying to start drama like always. Zaya felt her heart shatter. That's not true. Why would I lie about my sister getting hurt? Brett raised a helpful hand. Actually, I think I heard her earlier complaining about stomach pain. Didn't you, Logan? Oh yeah, Logan agreed easily. That's why she fell. She probably didn't eat lunch or something. Zaya's hands curled into fists at her sides. You're making this up. You moved her body. Hargrove's expression hardened. Zaya, enough. No, Zaya pleaded. Please. They're lying. They hurt her. Zaya. Hargrove interrupted sharply, voice slicing through the air. Accusing other students of violence is serious. If this is just a misunderstanding, you could be suspended for making false claims. Zaya's breath stopped cold. Suspended? For trying to save her sister? She stared at Hargrove, stunned and betrayed. I'm telling the truth. Please, she didn't fall. He pushed her. Chase clicked his tongue. This is sad. She's so desperate for attention she'll say anything. Logan smirked. Maybe she's the one who pushed her sister. Ever think of that? Logan! Zaya screamed, trembling with rage. Shut up! You, enough! Hargrove snapped. The authority in her tone silenced everyone except Zaya's breaking heart. Hargrove walked over to Zuri and knelt, checking her pulse and breathing. She's stable, she murmured. Probably just fainted. Fainted? Zaya shouted. She hit her head on metal. You didn't even check. Hargrove rose slowly, adjusting her blouse. Until I see evidence, I will not accuse other students of causing harm. And right now, the only person causing panic is you, Zaya. Zaya felt the world collapse beneath her feet. They're lying, she whispered. Why can't you see they're lying? Because your story doesn't match what I'm seeing, Hargrove replied coldly. No bruises, no blood, no witnesses. Zaya's voice trembled. There were witnesses. They ran. They're scared. Convenient, Hargrove said, but irrelevant, Logan smirked. Chase crossed his arms triumphantly. Brett recorded Zaya's distress with quiet satisfaction. And something inside Zaya cracked. Her voice rose, trembling with fury and betrayal. Why do adults always believe them? They are horrible. They are dangerous. They're… Zaya, Hargrove cut in sharply. That is enough. I will escort your sister to the nurse. You will return to class. We will speak with your father later. My father's already coming, Zaya whispered, eyes burning. And he will not believe your lies. Chase raised an eyebrow mockingly. Oh no, Daddy's coming. I'm shaking. Logan laughed. Zaya wanted to scream, to tear their lies apart, to make anyone see the truth. But she was one girl standing against 3 bullies and a system that protected them. She knelt beside Zuri again, brushing hair from her sister's forehead. The injury wasn't visible because Logan had angled her body to hide it. It was all planned, all covered up. But then, something unexpected happened. As Hargrove and the wolf pack continued talking, Zaya noticed a student lingering at the far end of the hallway, half hidden behind the corner, a freshman she vaguely recognized. Their hands trembled as they clutched their phone. The student met Zaya's eyes for a split second, fearful, guilty, apologetic. Then they mouthed 2 silent words. I recorded. Zaya's heart lurched. The student slipped back behind the corner and disappeared moments before Hargrove turned around. Zaya didn't speak. She didn't breathe. She didn't dare draw attention to anything, but inside her chest, Hope sparked like a match in darkness. A recording existed. A witness existed. The truth existed. And no matter how hard the wolf pack tried to bury it, the truth had a way of breaking through. Zaya's voice was hoarse as she whispered to no one, "Why do adults always believe them? Why do they never believe us?" Moments later, the anonymous student, hands shaking, pressed send on their phone. The video of Logan shoving Zuri into the lockers flew straight to one person who would not ignore it: Zaya's father. The city blurred past the windshield as Cade steered his SUV down Westbridge Avenue, the afternoon sun flashing harsh white across the hood. He had just wrapped a meeting with district administrators, his mind still cluttered with budget projections and staffing plans. The day had been long, tedious, predictable, until his phone vibrated with a call from Zaya. The moment he heard her voice, everything inside him went still. "Dad!" she choked out, breathless, sobbing. I don't know what to do." Zuri fell, she hit her head, "She's not waking up." Cade's grip on the steering wheel tightened so violently the leather creaked. "Zaya, slow down. Tell me exactly what happened." Her words came in broken fragments, tangled with tears. "She didn't fall. Logan shoved her, she hit the lockers so hard, and then they moved her and lied about it, and the dean won't believe me, and they won't let me take her to the nurse. They're just standing there, they're laughing, Dad. They're laughing." The last word cracked apart like shattered glass. Cade inhaled through his nose, the kind of long, controlled breath that came before a storm. His daughters were many things: bright, stubborn, brilliant, but they were never dramatic liars. If Zaya said this happened, it happened. "Zuri isn't waking up?" His voice was low, steady, almost too calm. "No, she's not. She's breathing, but it's slow. Dad, I'm scared." Her voice trembled. "And they won't let me help her." "What do you mean they won't let you?" "They keep saying she fainted. They won't let me touch her. They keep telling the dean lies. And she believes them." Cade's jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. He stared at the road ahead, vision tunneling, heartbeat deepening into something heavy and dangerous. He was 2 kilometers away, 2,000 meters between him and his daughters. 2,000 meters too many. "Zaya, listen to me carefully." Yes, Dad? Are you safe?" "Yes, but they're looking at me like they want to." "Zaya!" His voice sharpened. "Are you safe right this second?" A small pause. "For now?" "Good." It was enough. He flicked on his turn signal and swerved onto Westbridge Parkway, ignoring the honk from the car in the next lane. His eyes dropped to the screen, just as a new notification appeared. One video received. The sender was unknown. The preview image showed Zuri standing in the hallway, Logan's arm raised. Cade tapped it. The video played instantly, filling the cabin with the unmistakable sound of metal lockers rattling as Logan slammed his hands into Zuri's shoulders, sending her flying backward. Her head struck the corner edge. The hollow crack echoed through the car like a gunshot. Zaya's scream followed. Cade's vision went white, not with fear, not with panic, with something colder: purpose. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was violence, intentional, brutal, and filmed. And the school had dared to call his daughter a liar. Zaya's voice pulled him back. "Dad, are you still there?" "Yes," he said quietly. Too quietly. "Please hurry." Cade didn't answer with words. He slammed his foot onto the accelerator. The SUV roared forward like a released beast, the speedometer jumping past the limit. The engine growled under the strain, but Cade didn't care, didn't even hear it. All he could hear was Zuri's head hitting metal, over and over in his mind, sinking with the pounding in his veins. "I'll be there in 3 minutes," he said, voice cold as steel. "Nobody touches either of you again. Do you understand?" Zaya let out a shaking breath. "Yes, Dad." "Good. Stay by your sister. Do not argue with them. Do not let them separate you. I'll handle everything once I arrive." "Oh, okay. And Zaya?" "Yes? You did the right thing calling me." A small, broken sob came through. "I didn't know who else would help us." "You're never alone," he said. "Not while I'm alive." He hung up, set the phone on the passenger seat, and exhaled once a slow, dangerous breath that emptied every ounce of restraint he had left. 3 minutes. 3 minutes until the wolf pack faced the one man in the district who could dismantle every lie they'd told. 3 minutes until the school's habit of protecting aggressors ended. 3 minutes until someone finally believed. Zaya. Cade gripped the wheel tighter. His daughters were everything. Their safety wasn't negotiable. And this school, this system, had failed them in the most predictable, infuriating way. As he swerved onto the final stretch toward the school, flashes of memory rose unbidden. Zuri's bright smile when she showed him her A+ on her science project. Zaya's quiet whisper the night she confessed she hated walking hallways alone because of those boys. His own promise that they were safe, that adults would protect them. That promise had been broken. Today. But his next one wouldn't be. Ahead, the school's brick building appeared around the curve, the parking lot sprawling empty in the afternoon heat. Cade pressed the accelerator harder. His SUV surged forward. 3 minutes. The countdown had begun. Meanwhile, inside hallway A, the wolf pack wasn't done. Logan leaned against the lockers, arms crossed, watching Zuri's barely conscious form with mild annoyance. How long is she gonna take? She looks pathetic, just lying there. Probably faking, Chase muttered, scrolling through his phone. She likes attention. Brett snorted. Should we tell her to stop acting? Or should we tell the little crybaby to stop lying to adults? Zaya hugged Zuri's shoulders protectively, glaring at them through burning eyes. Her hands trembled not with fear anymore, but fury. "Leave us alone," she whispered. Chase smirked. "Or what? You gonna tell more stories? You know, adults never believe you people." Logan nodded. "Better watch what you say. We could make this a lot worse for you." Brett grinned. "If she tries to tell the truth again, we'll say she attacked us." Zaya's heart pounded. She swallowed hard. "My dad's coming." Chase laughed. "Let him. What's he gonna do? Talk to us? Threaten detention? Please." None of them knew what her father could do. None of them knew the video was already in his hands. None of them knew the storm racing their way at 70 miles per hour. But they would, in exactly 3 minutes. As Cade's SUV skidded into the school parking lot, the wolf pack closed in around Zaya, their shadows stretching over her as Logan whispered, "You better keep your mouth shut, or you'll wish she stayed unconscious." The stairwell between the east and west wings of the school was notorious for one thing. No teachers ever patrolled it. The fluorescent light at the top flickered with a faint buzz, and the concrete steps echoed with every footstep, making the place feel like a chamber designed to amplify fear. Zaya knew she shouldn't have gone this way. She knew it the moment she stepped into the cold, echoing space. But she needed a quiet corner to catch her breath, to breathe without the wolf pack's shadows looming over her. She wanted to be close enough to hear if help arrived, but hidden enough so no one touched Zuri again. She didn't get the chance. Before she could turn around, Chase's hand slammed into the wall beside her head, blocking her exit, his face inches from hers. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his voice low, taunting. Zaya's stomach knotted. "Move." Chase's smirk widened. "No, I don't think I will." Logan and Brett closed in behind them, forming a semicircle that cut her off from the stairway. Logan cracked his knuckles loudly. Theatrically, just intimidation, but enough to make most students break. Zaya stood her ground, though her legs trembled. Chase leaned his weight into the wall, bringing his face closer, forcing her to feel his breath on her cheek. "Let's talk about your little story," he said softly. "The one where you're accusing us of hurting your sister." Zaya swallowed hard. "I didn't make anything up. You shoved her." "No," Chase snapped, slamming his hand harder against the wall so the impact echoed through the stairwell. "You're going to say she slipped. Understand? I'm not lying for you." Chase's smile returned, colder this time. "You don't have a choice." Logan stepped forward. His presence alone made the space feel suffocating. "We're being nice right now," he added. "You don't want to see what happens when we're not." Zaya clenched her fists but didn't back down. "My sister could die because of you." Chase rolled his eyes. "Stop being dramatic. She's fine. She's breathing. And all you have to do is tell everyone she tripped. That's it. Why would I do that? Zaya snapped, voice trembling but fierce. So, you can keep bullying people until someone else ends up in the hospital? Chase's smirk vanished. His eyes hardened in an instant. He grabbed her by the front of her shirt and shoved her backward into the wall, hard enough to rattle the metal railings. You don't get to talk to me like that, he hissed. Zaya's breath hitched, but she refused to look away. Her chest rose and fell in sharp, panicked gasps, but her eyes stayed locked on his, burning with equal parts fear and rage. Behind Chase, Brett shifted nervously, wiping sweat from his palms. Chase, maybe we should just calm down. I don't think— Shut up, Brett, Chase snapped without looking at him. But Brett didn't shut up. His anxiety spilled out faster than he could control. It's just, what if someone saw it? What if camera angle 2 picked it up? You know, the one by the Logan shot him a death glare. Chase's head whipped around. What camera? Brett's face went pale. Nothing. I mean, maybe it's just— What? Camera, Chase repeated, voice dropping so low it vibrated through the stairwell. The angle by the trophy case, Brett stammered. They upgraded the cameras last year, remember? There might be footage of the hallway from the side we didn't check. Logan cursed under his breath. You idiot! Chase squeezed his eyes shut and inhaled sharply through his nose. When he opened them again, the calculation behind them was chilling. He turned to Logan. Go. Now. Smash it. Pull the wires. I don't care. Get rid of it. Logan nodded once, jaw clenched, and sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time. His footsteps thundered upward, vanishing into the upper hallway. Zaya's fear shifted into horror. Destroying evidence. They were really going to destroy the camera. You can't do that, she whispered. That's illegal. Everything's illegal if you say it out loud. Chase replied coolly. So don't. He tightened his grip on her shirt, pulling her closer. Here's what's going to happen. When the dean asks you again, you're going to say your sister was feeling sick. She fainted. That's all? No. Wrong answer. Chase shoved her again, harder, and Zaya hit the wall with a small cry. Brett winced. Dude, stop. If someone walks by— No one's walking by, Chase growled. She picked the one place no teachers ever go. Perfect spot for a conversation. This isn't a conversation, Zaya spat. It's a threat, Chase smiled. Now you're getting it. Zaya glared at him through tears. My dad is coming. He won't let you get away with this. Your dad? Chase scoffed. What's he going to do? Yell at us? Ground you? Please. Adults don't listen to you. They listen to us. You don't know my dad. Chase stepped closer, closing the last inch between them. And you don't know me. I always win. Something snapped in Zaya, then not physically, but emotionally. A tearing, breaking sound deep inside her chest as the weight of injustice crushed her. But something else rose with it, defiance. My dad will be here in 3 minutes, Zaya said, voice cracking but strong. And you should be scared, Chase laughed. Of what? Him yelling at us? No, Zaya shouted, voice echoing through the stairwell. Of what he'll do to the people who hurt his daughters. Her voice carried through the air like a shockwave. For the first time all day, Chase's smirk faltered. A faint sound drifted through the hallway from beyond the stairwell door. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Steady ones. Purposeful ones. Getting closer. Brett looked toward the door, his face draining of color. Chase? Someone's coming. Chase didn't answer. He finally stepped back, but his eyes were no longer confident, they were calculating. Nervous. Zaya wiped her tears, straightened her back, and shouted again, louder this time. My dad is coming. Her voice echoed up the staircase, down the hallway, and into the space where Logan was ripping wires out of a camera. The footsteps grew louder, measured, powerful, unhurried, and for the first time, the Wolfpack felt something they had never felt before. Fear. The hallway outside the stairwell was a battlefield of silence, thick, humming, charged with something electric. Students who had returned from their lockers or wandered back after the commotion froze mid-step, when they saw Zuri's unconscious body still slumped near the water fountain. A small circle of onlookers had gathered again, but no one dared get too close. The wolf pack's shadow was still fresh on their minds. Then the building changed. The air shifted. A presence hit the hallway like a pressure wave. A single sound cut through the chatter: footsteps. Slow, heavy, measured, unhurried in a way that was far more terrifying than running. Every head turned. At the far end of the hall, framed by the glass doors reflecting afternoon sunlight, stood Cade. He didn't look like a panicked parent rushing to a medical emergency. He didn't look frantic or wild-eyed or shaken. He looked controlled, focused, sharp enough to cut the atmosphere in half. His jaw was locked, a muscle flickering beneath the skin. His shoulders were squared beneath his tailored shirt, his eyes dark, calculating, lethal with purpose, fixed on one thing: his daughters. As he walked forward, the hallway reacted instinctively. Students parted without being asked. Conversations died mid-sentence. Phones lowered. Even the buzzing fluorescent lights felt quieter. It was as if the entire building recognized the storm entering its walls. Zaya saw him first. Her breath caught in her throat, not out of fear, but out of relief so overwhelming it nearly knocked her to her knees. "Dad," she whispered, though her voice barely carried. Cade didn't break stride. His eyes flicked to her, taking in her shaking hands, her swollen eyes, her trembling posture, then to Zuri's limp body on the floor. He reached them within seconds. Zaya stumbled forward. "Dad, she still hasn't woken up." Cade crouched beside Zuri, brushing her hair back with a steady but shaking hand. He examined her pupils, her breathing, the angle of her neck. Every movement was precise, practiced, clinical. He had seen injuries like these before. But then something else caught his attention. Zaya's neck. A faint but unmistakable darkening bruise. Oval. Finger-shaped. Fresh. Cade's expression didn't change. If anything, it became more still. Too still. "Zaya," he said quietly. "Who grabbed your neck?" Zaya froze. Her eyes darted toward the wolf pack, standing several yards away, trying and failing to blend into the crowd. Chase stood rigid. Brett shifted uncomfortably. Logan had reappeared from upstairs, breathing hard from his failed attempt to destroy the camera. Cade followed her gaze. His mind connected the pieces instantly. The bruise, the fear, the cover-up, the video now sitting on his phone, the trembling of Zaya's voice on the call. Cade rose slowly to his feet. The hallway, already silent, became deadly still. Even the students who hadn't known what was happening now sensed something irreversible approaching. Cade stood at full height, now taller than most of the faculty, broader than the average parent, and far more intimidating than any adult the students had ever seen inside the school. He turned his full attention to the wolf pack. Chase swallowed hard. Brett took a step back. Logan's smirk faltered into something closer to dread. Cade's voice, when he spoke, wasn't loud. He didn't need volume. He had gravity. "Which one of you?" he asked. Each word carved from steel. "Put your hands on my daughters." A collective breath sucked in across the hallway. No bluster. No shouting. No threats. Just a question, a terrifying one. Chase tried to laugh, but the sound came out thin and shaky. "Sir, you've got it wrong. We were just trying to help." Cade took one step toward him. Chase's mouth snapped shut. Brett's eyes darted around desperately, like he was searching for an escape route that no longer existed. Logan clenched his jaw, trying to look tough, but his fingers twitched nervously. No one answered. Cade scanned their faces one by one, unblinking. "Let me ask again," he said, voice lower. "Who touched my daughters?" Silence. Zaya's heart hammered. She watched the wolf pack crumble, not physically, not yet, but internally. Their confidence cracked. Their arrogance dripped away, their composure shattered under the weight of a man who didn't have to raise his voice to be terrifying. And then, predictably, pathetically, Chase broke first. It wasn't me," he blurted, pointing a shaky finger at Brett. "It was him." Brett grabbed her. "I didn't touch anyone." Brett's jaw dropped. "What? No, I didn't. Chase, you're the one who—" "You're lying," Chase snapped, stepping back. "You're the one who—" Their voices rose, desperate, tripping over each other, trying to rewrite the story in real time. The once invincible wolf pack, the rulers of the hallways, were unraveling like cheap thread. Students stared in disbelief. Zaya watched too, but she didn't smile. Not yet. Not until her father decided what came next. Cade didn't look at Chase, or Brett, or Logan. He looked at Zaya. Her eyes were swollen with tears. Her hands shook. Her voice had been ignored. Her truth dismissed. Her safety threatened. And the bruise on her neck pulsed like a brand. Cade turned back to the boys. His face hardened from stone to something colder, something bordering on dangerous. "Let me make this perfectly clear," he said, his tone soft in the most chilling way imaginable. "Lying will do nothing for you now." Chase's breathing quickened. Brett's hands fidgeted. Logan stared at the floor, jaw tight. The hallway held its breath. Students leaned in. Teachers at the far end paused mid-step. Even the building seemed to wait. Cade took another step forward, closing half the distance between himself and the wolf pack. His eyes were twin blades. His presence was a verdict. And then he asked again, voice quieter than before, but heavy enough to crush bones. "Who put their hands on my daughters?" The words echoed through the hallway like a sentence being passed. Panic surged through Chase as he shoved Brett forward, desperately trying to redirect blame, unaware that his attempt to escape responsibility would ignite chaos inside the wolf pack and expose everything they'd been hiding. The air inside the discipline office was thick enough to choke on, as though the walls themselves were bracing for conflict. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow across the polished floor, and neatly stacked disciplinary folders on the shelves. But today, the room didn't feel clean. It felt contaminated by lies, by fear, by the rot of a system too comfortable protecting the wrong people. Dean Hargrove stood behind her desk, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line as Cade stepped into the office with the force of a silent earthquake. Zaya trailed behind him, one hand still clutching her neck. Several students who had witnessed the confrontation lingered outside the doorway, unsure whether to come in or flee from the tension radiating from the room. The wolf pack stood against the far wall, trying to appear casual, but the fear was obvious. Chase's hands fidgeted at his sides. Brett couldn't stop shifting his weight. Logan's eyes darted between the doorway and the security panel, calculating his chances of escape. Hargrove cleared her throat. "Mr. Cade, I understand you're upset." "Upset?" Cade repeated softly, closing the office door behind him with a controlled click. "My daughter is unconscious. My other daughter is bruised. And you want to begin by telling me how I feel?" Hargrove blinked rapidly. "There's been a misunderstanding. According to these boys, Zuri wasn't pushed. She fainted. They even tried to help her." Zaya stepped forward, voice trembling with disbelief. "She's lying. Dad, she's protecting them again." Hargrove stiffened. "Zaya, that is enough. I will not tolerate accusations against Cade," raised a hand. The gesture was small, but the room fell silent. "Dean Hargrove," he said, voice low, "I want to see the security footage from hallway A. Now." Hargrove's lips parted. A flicker of panic flashed behind her eyes, quick but noticeable. "The cameras?" she began hesitantly. "Well, you see, sometimes the angles don't capture everything." "And stop," Cade said sharply. Hargrove did. Every eye in the room turned to him, Zaya's filled with desperate hope, the wolf packs glazed with dread, the student witnesses wide with anticipation. Cade stepped forward, planting both hands on the desk. "My daughter is unconscious on a school floor because of violence. My other daughter has visible hand-shaped bruises on her neck. And you're telling me the cameras might not be helpful?" He leaned in, voice dropping to something dangerously calm. "Dean, this school receives one of the highest district budgets for security. So unless every camera in this building magically malfunctioned in the last 30 minutes, you're going to show me that footage." Hargrove swallowed, hard. "Of course," she murmured, flustered. "I'll access the files." She walked toward the monitor with stiff, jerky movements. Her fingers trembled as she typed in her login credentials. A loading bar appeared, crawling across the screen. Chase whispered to Logan urgently, "Did you get the second camera? Tell me you smashed it." Logan lowered his voice. "It was too high. I only got the main one. It'll be fine." Brett's face paled. "You don't know that." Cade heard every word. The loading screen vanished, revealing the security panel a grid of numbered camera feeds. Hargrove clicked on hallway A. The screen went black. "There," she said shakily. "It appears this camera malfunctioned. That must be why. Try another angle." Cade cut in. Hargrove hesitated. "Mr. Cade, that hallway only has one active camera." "No, it doesn't," he replied coldly. "The district upgraded your system last year. You now have a secondary wide-angle lens near the trophy case." He turned, eyes icy. "Which your student mentioned earlier." Logan froze. Chase went rigid. Brett's breath hitched. Hargrove's face drained of color. I wasn't aware. That's your job." He pointed to the screen. "Pull up camera 2. Her fingers fumbled on the mouse. After a few clicks, a different feed opened. A wider view of the hallway. Students walking, lockers, a water fountain, and then Zuri, standing with Zaya. The wolf pack approaching. The tension in the room became a living creature. Zaya's heart slammed against her ribs. Students at the door leaned in. Chase muttered under his breath, "No, no, no." Cade didn't blink. The footage played, Logan stepping forward, Zuri speaking, Chase smirking, Brett recording. Then Logan's shove. The impact was vicious, unmistakable. Zuri's head struck the locker with a metallic crack so loud the microphone distorted. Zaya gasped softly, tears spilling down her cheeks. The room fell silent as the video captured Zuri collapsing onto the floor, unconscious. Not fainting, not slipping. Assault, in its purest, ugliest form. Logan's cocky grin dissolved as his past 30 minutes of lies unraveled in front of him. Hargrove covered her mouth with a trembling hand. "Oh my, I didn't know." "Yes," Cade said quietly, his voice sharper than any shout. "You did. She told you. My daughter told you. And you chose to believe them." Hargrove backed up until she hit the cabinet behind her, stunned into silence. Chase was the first to break. It wasn't supposed to happen like that," he stammered. She just made him mad, she. Cade raised a single eyebrow. "She made him mad? So he knocked her unconscious?" Brett stepped forward frantically. "We didn't mean—" "It wasn't Chase," said. "Shut up," Chase hissed. The fragile alliance between them cracked like glass. One lie had protected them. One camera destroyed them. Cade stepped closer, his presence swallowing the room. "Let me be perfectly clear," he said slowly, every syllable precise and merciless. "This was an assault, not an accident, not a misunderstanding, and every adult who ignored my daughters will answer for it." No one spoke. No one breathed. The only sound was the faint hum of the monitor, replaying the moment of impact in an endless loop. Cade exhaled once, a slow, contained breath that meant danger. "Dean Hargrove," he said, without looking at her, "call the parents of these boys. Now." Hargrove nodded numbly, reaching for the phone with shaking hands. "And," Cade continued, "notify the principal and the district board. They will join us in this room." Yes, of course." Chase looked at the floor. Brett fidgeted with his sleeves. Logan's bravado had collapsed completely. The wolf pack was falling apart, and justice, real justice, had just begun. As Hargrove dialed the first number with trembling fingers, the parents of the wolf pack began rushing toward the school, unaware that the moment they stepped inside, every lie their sons told would detonate in their faces. The conference room on the second floor was designed for calm, professional meetings, soft lighting, polished wood table, framed certificates on the wall. But today, the air inside it throbbed with resentment, fear, and something darker, the unraveling of privilege that had gone unchecked for far too long. Principal Ross stood near the head of the table, nervously straightening the cuffs of his shirt as parents filed in. He looked nothing like the confident authority figure who made morning announcements. Today he seemed small, cornered, and unsure of how to navigate the storm gathering under his roof. And then the storm walked in. Cade entered with a silence sharper than anger. His presence hardened the entire room. Behind him trailed Zaya, shaken but determined, and a staff member guiding Zuri on a stretcher toward the nurse's temporary station set up nearby. Every parent in the room glanced at her pale face and widened eyes, then quickly looked away. 3 families sat on one side of the table. Chase's parents in their expensive blazers, Logan's father, a stern man with a bulldog jaw, and Brett's mother, wringing her hands anxiously. On the opposite side stood Cade, arms folded, face unreadable. Principal Ross cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. This is obviously a difficult situation." "Yes," Chase's father interrupted sharply. "A difficult situation because we got dragged from our jobs over some exaggerated story." He loosened his tie and shot Cade a dismissive glance. "I understand your daughter fainted." But Cade didn't speak. Not yet, but his stillness was a warning. Chase's mother leaned forward, voice dripping with irritation. "Teenagers overreact, especially certain kids." She waved her hand vaguely toward Zaya. "These things get blown out of proportion so easily." Zaya inhaled sharply, her jaw trembling, but Chase's father wasn't done. "Let's be honest," he said with an indulgent chuckle. "Kids of color tend to dramatize conflict, and then everyone gets in trouble for nothing. Our boys didn't harm anyone." Silence fell like a dropped blade. Principal Ross's eyes darted nervously to Cade, who hadn't moved an inch, but the temperature in the room felt like it dropped 10 degrees. Then Cade finally spoke. "You're stating," he said slowly, "that my daughters overreacted? That what happened was exaggerated?" Chase's father shrugged. "According to the dean, the boys said the girl fainted. She was knocked unconscious." Cade interrupted, voice chillingly calm. "Directly and intentionally. We have footage." Logan's father stiffened. "Footage?" Cade nodded once. "Footage," Chase's mother scoffed. "There must be a misunderstanding. Chase would never." But she didn't finish her sentence, because at that moment, Principal Ross tapped the screen at the front of the conference room. The grainy but unmistakable footage filled the display. Logan's shove, the violent impact, the sound of skull on metal, Zuri collapsing. Zaya winced when the audio replayed her own scream. When the clip ended, the room fell completely silent. Chase's mother blinked at the screen, pale. That can't be right," Chase's father stammered. I'm sure she hit the locker accidentally." Logan's father snarled at his own son under his breath. "You told me she fainted." Brett's mother covered her mouth in horror. "Oh my God." Principal Ross swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "This is far more serious than we initially understood." Zaya felt a flicker of vindication, but the moment didn't last. Chase's father straightened defensively. "Let's not jump to conclusions. It's one angle. Kid's roughhouse. There's no proof it was malicious." Zaya stared at him as if she couldn't understand how a person could be so blind or refuse so thoroughly to see. Then a voice rose from the corner. A mother stood up, not one of the bully parents, someone else entirely, a woman with tired eyes and a quiet strength in her stance. She had been sitting quietly in the row of parent observers the office had contacted as part of the investigation. No one had paid attention to her. They should have. "My son," she said, voice trembling but firm, "was bullied by these boys last semester." Logan's father whipped toward her. "Excuse me?" She didn't flinch. "They pushed him down the stairs and threatened to beat him up if he told anyone." "That's a lie," Brett's mother snapped. But the woman continued, voice rising, "and they told him no adult would ever believe a word he said, that they always win." A tear slid down her cheek. "So he didn't report it, because he was afraid of them, and afraid of you." Another parent stood, then another. Whispers rippled through the room like a growing storm. "My daughter was afraid of them too. Chase cornered my nephew last year. Logan threatened my son in the locker room." Principal Ross's face drained of color. The Wolfpack parents looked around helplessly as accusations piled up, each one a crack in the wall of denial they had built around their children. Finally, the woman turned toward Cade. "Your daughters are the first kids brave enough to stand up, to push back." She wiped her tears. "Please don't let them be silenced." Cade nodded once, deep, respectful, solemn. Principal Ross rubbed his forehead. This changes everything." "Yes," Cade said quietly. "It does." He stepped forward, placing a folder onto the center of the table. The soft thud made everyone flinch. "These," he said, "are the official disciplinary charges, effective immediately." The room held its breath. Cade's voice was controlled, but the weight behind it was absolute. Physical assault, resulting in loss of consciousness. Intimidation of a minor. Obstruction and destruction of school property. Tampering with evidence. Menacing behavior toward witnesses. Logan swallowed hard. Chase's facade cracked. Brett's knees trembled. Chase's father sputtered, "You can't," but Cade cut him off with a single glare. A glare that communicated power, authority, and a truth no one could deny. He wasn't just a parent. He was the district official who held the careers of every administrator in the room in his hands. Principal Ross cleared his throat. "These charges will move forward. Immediately." The Wolfpack parents erupted, shouting, defending, pointing fingers, but none of it mattered. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone knew it. As the conference room dissolved into chaos, Cade stood unmoving, cold, steady, unstoppable, before quietly instructing the administrators, "Now bring me their records. I want every hidden complaint, every buried report, every ignored warning on this table." The principal's office was supposed to embody order: mahogany shelves, lined with academic trophies, framed motivational quotes, thick carpets that muted every step. But tonight, none of that mattered. The room felt like a courtroom awaiting its verdict, and everyone inside knew that truth, real, unfiltered, undeniable truth, was about to be dragged into the light. Principal Ross stood behind his desk, shifting uncomfortably as Cade entered with Zaya close behind. The wolf pack sat in stiff chairs along the wall, their eyes darting around like trapped animals. Their parents filled the remaining seats, some fuming, others pale and shaken after what they'd seen in the conference room. Cade closed the door slowly, quietly, yet the sound was somehow louder than a slam. He walked to the center of the office and placed a thick folder on the desk. Ross cleared his throat. "Mr. Cade, what is that?" Cade didn't speak for a moment. He simply opened the folder and fanned out several documents pages filled with typed statements, timestamps, staff signatures, and descriptions of incidents that should have never been ignored. 5 reports, he said, voice controlled and sharp. 5 separate bullying complaints, submitted by parents and students over the last 2 years. The room blackened around the edges. Ross blinked rapidly. I don't understand. These were never brought to my—" "They were filed," Cade interrupted. "They were documented. They were delivered to this office." His eyes locked onto Ross's. "You just never acted on them." A gasp escaped Brett's mother. Logan's father bristled. Chase's parents stiffened, their confidence draining by the second. Ross swallowed hard. "Mr. Cade, I assure you, if these reports existed, I would have—" "They do exist," Cade said icily. He slid one report across the desk. "This is from a 7th grade student who reported Logan pushing him down the locker row until he bruised his ribs." Logan's father jerked his gaze toward his son. Logan looked away. Cade placed another sheet down. "This one is from a girl who said Chase cornered her in the cafeteria and threatened her for sitting at their table." Chase's mother's face drained of color. A 3rd report. This from a freshman who caught Brett filming him in the bathroom and threatening to post it. Brett hung his head. A 4th. A 5th. Each sheet landed on the desk like a hammer blow, stacking evidence layer upon suffocating layer. The sound of paper sliding across wood felt deafening. Ross's face turned chalk white. "There must be some explanation," he stammered. "These never reached my—" "Yes," Cade said calmly. "They did." He pulled one last page from the folder, the most damning of all. a disciplinary form with a familiar, looping signature at the bottom, Hargrove. Dean Hargrove stood in the corner of the room, her posture rigid, hands clasped behind her as though she were trying to disappear into the wallpaper. Her face drained the moment she saw the document. Cade read aloud, "Recommendation. Incident dismissed due to lack of evidence. Student advised not to escalate." Signed, Dean Meredith Hargrove. Hargrove's knees almost buckled. Ross's voice cracked. "Meredith, this is your signature?" Hargrove swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. I was trying to prevent conflict. Kids exaggerate. You thought wrong," Cade cut in sharply. His voice was no longer calm. It was thunder wrapped in restraint. "You dismissed 5 complaints, 5 incidents of violence, 5 pleas for help. And because you did nothing, these boys felt invincible." He stepped closer. "And today, my daughter paid the price." Hargrove trembled. Her head dropped. Her voice a fractured whisper. "I didn't mean, you don't have to mean harm to cause it," Cade said. "But you will face consequences for it." The office grew unbearably silent. Students watching through the window pressed closer. Staff members hovering outside stopped breathing. The Wolfpack parents sat frozen, the weight of the evidence pressing down like a physical force. Chase's father muttered, voice hollow, This can't all be true." But the truth was in front of him. Signed, tamped, ignored. Ross finally sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. "I had no idea these reports were being suppressed. Mr. Cade, I assure you this is not how we handle discipline in our district." Cade straightened, his presence filling the room like a verdict made flesh. "Then it's time you learn what discipline looks like when it's applied correctly." He turned toward the Wolfpack. "Stand up." The 3 boys rose shakily. Chase looked like he wanted to disappear. Logan looked like he wanted to argue but couldn't find words. Brett looked like he might cry. Cade's tone was merciless. "You assaulted a student until she lost consciousness. You threatened her sister. You attempted to destroy evidence. You lied repeatedly to faculty. And your history," he gestured to the papers, "shows a pattern of targeted aggression." Chase flinched. Brett's mother sobbed quietly. Logan's father clenched his fists. Hargrove lowered her head, unable to meet Cade's eyes. Ross whispered, "This is catastrophic." "No," Cade corrected. "This is justice." He turned to Ross, delivering the next words with surgical precision. "I am filing for full disciplinary action under District Code 47B. Violence, resulting in injury, intimidation of witnesses, and administrative negligence." Ross nodded shakily. "The board will approve it immediately." The Wolfpack parents erupted simultaneously. "You can't do this. This is overkill. They're just kids. He provoked them. You don't understand." But Cade didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He held up the 5 reports he had gathered, then pointed to the door where Zuri was being treated. "These," he said softly, "are not the actions of regular kids. They're the actions of boys who knew adults would protect them." He turned to Hargrove, eyes blazing. "And you proved them right." Hargrove's tears fell silently as she lowered her head, shame pouring off her like a confession. A suffocating stillness settled over the office. The Wolfpack truly realized what was coming next. The room froze entirely when the video replayed again on the monitor, Zuri's head hitting the metal locker, her body collapsing, and every adult finally understood the magnitude of what had been ignored. Without breaking eye contact with the boys, Cade said quietly to Principal Ross, "Begin the disciplinary rulings. We'll address each offender one by one." The hallway outside the principal's office had transformed from an ordinary stretch of lockers into a pressure chamber. Word traveled faster than breath in a school by the time the Wolfpack were escorted into the hall to await their disciplinary rulings. The entire student body already knew. Logan shoved Zuri. Zuri was hospitalized. The Wolfpack were exposed. The video was real. Clusters of students gathered in small circles, whispering urgently, their eyes flicking toward the 3 boys with a mixture of awe, disgust, and morbid curiosity. Phones buzzed non-stop. Someone had already recorded the clip of Zuri being struck, and it spread like wildfire. No longer confined to the security feed, it was now on half the phones in the school. For the first time in a long time, the wolf pack felt eyes on them, not in admiration or fear, but in accusation. Logan tried to keep his shoulders squared, but his bravado from earlier had evaporated completely. Brett wrung his hands until his knuckles turned white. Chase, though, wore a tight, furious expression, his jaw grinding back and forth as he scanned the hallway for anyone he could blame. The crowd parted when Zaya appeared at the end of the hall. She wasn't running, she wasn't trembling, she wasn't crying. She walked forward slowly, steady despite everything she'd endured, her swollen eyes, her bruised neck, her trembling hands. Students stepped aside instinctively, making space for her the way nature bends to an oncoming storm. Someone whispered, "That's her, the twin." Another murmured, "She stood up to them." A third, "Good, they finally got caught." The shift was unmistakable. For the first time, Zaya wasn't alone. She stopped several feet from the wolf pack. Chase's eyes burned when he saw her. "What are you looking at?" he spat. Before Zaya could respond, Brett suddenly stepped forward. "Stop it," Brett muttered, voice shaking. "Just stop." Chase whipped toward him. "What did you just say?" Brett swallowed hard. His eyes darted between Chase, Logan, and the students watching. Pressure built in his chest. It had been building for months, maybe years. "I'm done," Brett whispered. "I'm not covering for you anymore." Logan snapped his head toward Brett. "Shut up. Don't start." "No," Brett shouted, louder than anyone expected. His voice cracked, but he didn't back down. "I'm tired of taking the blame for you, Chase. I'm tired of being your shield." Students leaned in, stunned. Zaya froze. Chase's face twisted. "What are you doing?" What Brett did next would fracture their trio forever. He spoke clearly, loudly, deliberately. "Chase is the one who planned everything. Every attack, every threat. Every time someone got hurt, he told us to do it." Gasps spread across the hall. Zaya's breath caught. Even Logan stepped back, eyes widening. Chase's voice came out strangled. "You liar! He told Logan to shove Zuri," Brett continued, tears forming in his eyes. "He told me to film it. He always tells us what to do. He said no one would ever believe kids like them over boys like us." A hush swept through the hallway, sharp, devastating. Chase lunged forward, grabbing Brett by the collar. "I'll kill you!" Students screamed and backed away. Zaya stiffened. Logan jumped between them, pushing Chase back. "Stop! Are you insane? You're making it worse." But Chase wasn't listening. His entire world, his power was slipping from his fingers, and he could feel it. Panic-fueled rage, and rage-fueled desperation. "You think you can betray me?" Chase roared, pointing at Brett with shaking hands. "After everything, you think I'll let you get away with this?" Brett stumbled backward. "I'm telling the truth." "Liar! Everyone here knows it's true," Brett cried, voice cracking. "They only followed you because you scared them. You scared us all." The hallway erupted with murmurs. Students began nodding. Whispers spread like wildfire. "I believe him. Chase always acted like a leader. Yeah. He bullied people for years. It was him. It was always him." Chase's face reddened. Rage, humiliation, fear, an explosive combination. "Every single one of you," he snarled at the surrounding students, "will regret turning on me. I swear it. You'll all pay." His shout echoed through the hallway like a snapped wire. A teacher several feet away stepped forward nervously. "Chase, let's calm down." "No!" Chase roared. "I'm not calm." "I'm not—" He stopped abruptly, because standing behind the crowd, arms crossed, expression carved from stone, was Cade. Zaya hadn't even noticed him appear. His presence triggered the same reaction it had earlier. Silence crashing over the hall like a tidal wave. The students parted, exposing the three boys who now looked like children cornered in their own kingdom. Cade walked forward slowly, deliberately. His eyes didn't leave Chase. Chase stiffened, sweat beading along his temple. "Mr. Cade," Logan stuttered. Cade raised a hand. The hallway hushed. He looked at Brett first. "Are you telling the truth?" Brett nodded vigorously, tears spilling. "Yes, sir. He told us everything to do." I didn't ask what you wanted," Cade cut in. "I asked if it was the truth." Brett nodded again, trembling. Then Cade turned to chase the boy who had treated the school like his personal kingdom, who had ruled by intimidation, who was now facing a man he couldn't control. Chase opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Cade didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You're right about one thing," Cade said, tone icy. "Someone is going to pay for what happened." Chase swallowed hard. Students held their breath. Zaya's heart pounded. Cade leaned in slightly, just enough that Chase could feel the gravity of the words. "But the first person who will answer for all of this is you." Chase's eyes widened with a mixture of terror and rage as he screamed, "All of you will pay for this." But, for the first time, nobody stepped back, and as disciplinary officers arrived to escort the boys inside, Chase learned the truth he feared most. The only person paying first was him. The Special District Disciplinary Chamber did not look like a room meant for teenagers. It looked like a tribunal mahogany paneling, elevated seats for board members, microphones positioned like interrogators, and a long central table where the wolf pack now sat stiffly beneath the weight of consequences they never believed could touch them. At the far end of the room, Cade sat straight-backed, unreadable. Zaya sat beside him, hands clasped, eyes locked on the table. Across from them, Chase's parents whispered frantically to their son. Logan's father scowled, as if intimidation might change the outcome, and Brett's mother silently wept. The board members filed in a row of stern faces, folders clutched in their hands. When they sat, the room shifted. This was no longer a school matter. This was official. This was irreversible. Chairwoman Ellis adjusted her glasses and began. "We are here to review the assault incident involving students Chase Winder, Logan Price, and Brett Tanner. The evidence will now be presented." The lights dimmed slightly as a large monitor flickered to life. There it was again, the video. In front of every parent, administrator, and district official. The hallway scene replayed. Logan's shove, Zuri's violent collision with metal, her body collapsing like a marionette with its strings cut. Zaya's breath trembled, but she didn't look away this time. Logan's father muttered a curse under his breath. Brett closed his eyes. Chase dug his nails into the table, knuckles white. The video paused on the frame, showing Zuri's limp body on the floor. Chairwoman Ellis didn't soften her tone. "This alone constitutes severe physical misconduct. But we also have witness statements, text messages, footage of student intimidation, and evidence of attempted camera tampering." A thick folder was placed on the table. Photos of Zuri's injury, screenshots, reports, logs. The board moved efficiently, methodically, mercilessly. One by one, they reviewed the evidence aloud. The push captured on video, Zaya's recorded statement, a student witness describing the threats, the damaged hallway camera, Brett's confession, Logan's attempt to flee the scene, Chase's verbal outbursts caught in multiple recordings. It was overwhelming and damning. When they finished, Chairwoman Ellis folded her hands. "We will now issue the findings." The room held its breath. "Chase Winder," she said, turning to the blond boy now drenched in sweat, "you are found responsible for Level 2 violent conduct, defined as intentional physical aggression resulting in bodily harm and loss of consciousness." Chase's mother gasped. His father stiffened, jaw grinding in fury he couldn't direct anywhere. Chase stared ahead, eyes glassy. "Logan Price," Ellis continued, "you are found responsible for evidence tampering and intentional destruction of school property." Logan's father slammed a fist onto the table. "This is absurd. Your outburst will be noted," Ellis said sharply. Logan's father fell silent, seething. Finally, Ellis turned to the last boy, Brett Tanner. "After review of statements and your own admission, You are found responsible for complicity in violent misconduct. Brett crumpled in his seat, tears flowing freely now. Ellis wasn't finished. And lastly, she said, turning toward the administrators at the back, we have reviewed documentation related to suppressed complaints over the past 2 years. A cold weight settled over the room. Dean Hargrove froze. Ellis lifted one of the buried reports. Multiple investigations were dismissed by a single staff member without proper review or escalation. Hargrove's throat bobbed. You, Dean Hargrove, are hereby placed on immediate administrative suspension pending further review for negligence and obstruction of student protection. The room exploded, Hargrove gasped, stumbling back into her seat. Chase's parents turned furious. A teacher in the corner covered her mouth in shock, but nothing drowned out the quiet satisfaction in Zaya's eyes. She wasn't proud. She wasn't vengeful. She simply saw justice acknowledging what she endured. Chairwoman Ellis tapped the table. These rulings are final. Each student will receive written notice of consequences, including removal from all extracurricular activities, mandatory hearings, and potential transfer to district behavioral programs. Chase snapped. This is insane, he shouted, standing abruptly. We didn't do anything wrong. She. His voice cracked. No one listened. No one believed him now. For the first time in his life, his words held no weight, and Cade chose that moment to stand. Silence blanketed the room again. A board member slid a pen across the table toward him. Mr. Cade, she said gently, as the parent representative and district HR director, you may sign the implementation order. He didn't hesitate. He took the pen between his fingers. He looked at Chase, Logan, Brett, each of whom suddenly wished they could disappear. He looked at Hargrove, who bowed her head in shame. Then he signed. 1 signature, 3 futures broken, 1 corrupt system exposed. As Cade placed the pen down, the weight of the decision rippled through the chamber, an action that would shake the entire school by morning. Because now that the verdict was official, the punishments would begin, and the fallout would be unlike anything Westbridge had ever seen. By the time the disciplinary rulings were finalized, the entire school buzzed like a hive shaken from sleep. Rumors sprinted down every hallway. Students peeked from classroom doors. Teachers whispered in tight circles, bracing for the announcement they never thought they'd hear. Then the intercom clicked. Attention, students and faculty. All classes, please remain where you are. All parties involved in today's disciplinary review will now be escorted to the main hallway. The crackle ended. The doors opened, and the building began to shift. The walk of consequences. The hallway outside the main office filled within seconds. Students gathered shoulder to shoulder, craning their necks to see what was happening. Even the loudest troublemakers stayed quiet, sensing the gravity in the air. Then the doors opened. Cade stepped out, first calm, composed, radiating an authority that made even the teachers draw back. Behind him walked Principal Ross, face pale and tight, clutching a stack of papers like they weighed 100 pounds. And then came the wolf pack. Chase burst through the doorway like a thundercloud. Fury etched across every line of his face. Logan followed, shoulders tense, jaw locked. Brett trailed behind them, eyes cast downward, guilt shadowing every step. Their parents stumbled out next, arguing, whispering, begging none of it mattered anymore. Principal Ross held up a hand. Students, he announced, voice trembling despite his attempt at formality. Earlier today, a severe incident occurred on this campus. After a full investigation by the district board, decisions have been reached regarding the students responsible. A hush washed over the hallway, heavy, suffocating. Ross unfolded the first page. Effective immediately, Chase Winder is hereby expelled from Westbridge School District. Permanently. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Expelled. Permanently. The word hit Chase like a slap. His face drained, then flushed red with humiliation. "You can't!" he yelled, voice cracking. "You can't do this! My dad, your father, was present for the ruling. Ross interrupted. Chase's father grabbed Ross by the arm. "You have no idea what you're doing. This will ruin his future." But Ross stepped back, shaking his head. "The decision is final," students murmured. Some shook their heads. Others looked at Chase with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The untouchable king of Westbridge, dethroned. For the first time ever, Chase looked small. Ross lifted the next page. "Logan Price is suspended indefinitely pending district reassignment. He will also be held financially responsible for property damage and evidence tampering." Logan's father erupted. "He's a minor. You can't." Cade stepped forward. "Under district code, intentional destruction of surveillance equipment constitutes felony-level vandalism. Age does not exempt responsibility." Logan's father froze. Students whispered. Logan swallowed hard. His swagger, his bravado gone, the reality of consequences finally reached him. Ross unfolded the third ruling. Brett Tanner will face severe probationary discipline, mandatory behavioral intervention, and long-term monitoring. He will be placed on a zero-tolerance contract for the remainder of his enrollment. Brett's mother exhaled shakily, hands covering her face. Brett didn't cry this time. He stood there absorbing every word, accepting that he had played a role, even if he hadn't delivered the final blow. Finally, Ross raised the last paper. And regarding staff involvement, a ripple of tension moved through the hallway. Dean Hargrove stood rigid among the faculty, trying to mask the tremor in her hands. Ross continued, voice heavy. "Dean Meredith Hargrove has been placed on immediate administrative termination for negligence, obstruction of student protection policies, and failure to report documented incidents." A wave of shock swept through the crowd. Hargrove's knees buckled. A teacher reached out to steady her, but she pulled away. Her eyes darted toward Cade, shame, guilt, and fear, all tangled in her expression. Cade didn't look away. He didn't flinch. He didn't soften. She had failed his daughters. She had failed countless others. And now, for the first time in years, she was facing consequences. Students whispered harshly, "She covered for them? That's why nobody did anything." "Good, she deserves it." Hargrove turned her face away, unable to meet anyone's eyes. A silence that said everything. Principal Ross lowered the papers. No one spoke. No one moved. The hallway echoed with the kind of silence that follows an explosion, shattered, stunned, suspended. No one could quite believe how quickly the power structure of the school had shifted. Chase's father grabbed his son's shoulder. "We're leaving." Chase jerked away. "I'll get even," he muttered through clenched teeth. "They'll all regret this." But his voice had no weight anymore. The spell he held over the school was broken. Logan followed his father without speaking, posture defeated. Brett lingered for a moment, glancing toward Zaya with wet eyes, not for sympathy, but apology he couldn't voice. And Hargrove walked alone, shoulders slumped, her career ending in the same hallway she once controlled. The mighty had fallen. The untouchable had been touched. Justice didn't whisper, it thundered. A long, stunned silence swallowed the hallway. No one could believe how fast everything had changed, how a school built on silence had been forced to listen, how a trio who ruled through fear had lost everything in a single day. Westbridge would never be the same. As the crowd slowly dispersed, a sudden announcement came from the nurse's room down the hall. Zuri is waking up." And just like that, the story shifted again. The nurse's room was too quiet, too white, too sterile, too still. The soft beeping from a portable monitor was the only sound breaking the silence. Afternoon sunlight filtered through the blinds, slicing the room into pale gold stripes that fell across Zuri's unconscious face. For hours, her chest had risen and fallen in the same fragile rhythm. For hours, Zaya had sat beside her, clutching her sister's limp hand like a lifeline. For hours, Cade had stood in the corner, arms crossed, jaw tight, watching over his daughters with a vigilance that not even exhaustion could weaken. And then, a flicker, a small furrow in Zuri's brow, a faint twitch of her fingers, a soft inhale that broke the frozen pattern. The nurse leaned forward. "She's coming around." Zaya shot upright so fast her chair scraped loudly across the tile. Zuri? Zuri? Zuri's eyelids fluttered slow, heavy, trembling. She blinked once, then again, her vision swimming into shape through a fog of pain and confusion. Her eyes finally focused on her sister. Zaya? She whispered, voice hoarse, fragile. Zaya sobbed in relief. I'm here. I'm right here. Zuri tried to lift her hand, but winced as pain shot down her neck. Her voice cracked, barely audible. "A, are you okay?" That single question, after everything she had endured, broke Zaya completely. She collapsed forward, arms wrapping around her sister in a trembling embrace. Tears soaked into Zuri's shoulder as she choked out. "Why are you asking about me? You're the one who got hurt." Zuri's fingers curled weakly into her sister's shirt. I heard shouting. Then, nothing. You don't have to remember," Zaya whispered, brushing hair from her sister's forehead. "Ba's here. Ba came." At that, Zuri's eyes shifted toward the foot of the bed. Cade stepped forward, slow, steady, trying to keep his voice calm even though his heart was a frantic drum in his chest. "Hey, sweetheart!" Zuri's lips parted. "Ba, you made it. I always will," he said softly. She swallowed painfully, touching the bandage wrapped around her head. "Did I faint?" Zaya pulled away just enough to look her in the eyes. Her voice trembled with anger, grief, and relief all twisted together. "No, you didn't faint. Logan shoved you. Hard. But they can't hurt us anymore, Zuri. Dad saw everything. He fixed it." Zuri stared, the memory slowly unraveling in her mind, the shove, the lockers, Zaya's scream. "Are you safe?" she whispered again. Zaya nodded through tears. "We're safe now. Ba's here, and no one can do anything to us ever again." The nurse smiled gently from behind her clipboard. "Vital signs are stabilizing. She's awake, alert, and responsive. That's a very good sign." Cade exhaled deep, long, and full of a weight he had been carrying since the moment he saw the video. He moved closer, kneeling beside the bed so he could meet Zuri's eyes without towering over her. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. "Both of you." Zuri frowned weakly. "Why? I didn't do anything. You survived," he replied. "And you trusted your sister. That takes strength." Zaya squeezed her sister's hand again. "You scared me so much." "You cried?" Zuri asked, attempting a small smile. Zaya laughed through tears, wiping her face. "Of course I cried. You scared the whole school." Zuri blinked. "What happened?" Before Zaya could answer, Cade placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You'll hear it all, but right now, you need to rest." The room quieted again. But this time, it wasn't the cold, fearful silence from before. This was a silence of peace, of safety, of family. Zuri looked at her father, really looked at him, and saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the clenched tension in his jaw, the way his hand hovered near her arm, as though afraid she might disappear if he didn't hold her close enough. "You're really here," she whispered. Cade brushed a tear from her cheek with a tenderness that made Zaya's heart ache. "There's nowhere else I would be." Outside, the muffled sounds of students moving through the hall seeped into the room, restless, buzzing, carrying the news of the wolf pack's downfall. Whispers traveled like wildfire. Expulsion, suspension, termination, justice. And in the middle of it all, two sisters clung to each other as the chaos outside slowly began to settle. Zuri closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. When she opened them again, the fear that once clouded her gaze had faded. "It's over?" she whispered. "For them," Cade replied. "But for us? It's just beginning." Zaya looked up. "What do you mean?" Cade stood, adjusting the collar of his shirt as his expression hardened with purpose again. "The school is calling an assembly. They want to address what happened. They want students to understand the truth and know they're protected from now on." Zuri blinked, still groggy. "An assembly? About me?" "About all of you," Cade corrected. "About courage. About accountability. About change." Something shifted in Zuri's eyes, a flicker of strength where only vulnerability had been moments before. She exhaled slowly. "Then I want to be there," she murmured. "People need to know we weren't the ones who should have been scared." Zaya squeezed her hand, smiling through the tears. "We'll go together." The relief filling the room didn't weaken them, it forged something powerful in both sisters. What had broken them hours earlier was now becoming their strength. Outside the nurse's room, administrators moved urgently through the halls. The entire school was being summoned to a full assembly, where the truth would finally be spoken aloud. The auditorium had never been this full. Seats overflowed, aisles packed with standing students, teachers lined along the walls, administrators gathered stiffly near the stage. A low, uneasy buzz filled the room, anticipation, guilt, fear, curiosity, all tangled into something electric. On stage, a wooden podium stood under a single spotlight. Behind it, a giant projection screen displayed the school crest, but no one was looking at the crest. All eyes were focused on the side entrance, where the curtains trembled gently. The assembly was waiting for one person. When Zuri stepped out, a hush fell over the room so quickly it felt like someone had pressed mute on the world. She walked slowly, still fragile, still healing. A bandage wrapped around her head, her posture slightly stiff with pain, but her eyes had changed. There was strength in them now, a quiet fire. Zaya walked beside her, offering an arm for balance, though Zuri insisted she could manage on her own. And behind them, Cade followed, solemn and steady, a silent guardian witnessing what his daughter was about to do. Students whispered, "Is that her? She looks so pale. She survived that hit. I heard Logan shoved her on purpose." With Cruz, 2 mores, a wage. "Are they really having her speak?" Zuri reached the podium. The microphone crackled softly as she adjusted it with trembling fingers. She took a breath and spoke. "Hi," she began quietly. "My name is Zuri." Her voice was soft, but in the absolute silence, it carried to every corner of the auditorium. "I know everyone has heard what happened. You saw the videos. You watched the hallway footage. You've probably replayed it 10 times by now." A few students shifted uncomfortably. Zuri continued, her voice gaining steadiness. "But there's something you didn't see, something the camera didn't capture." She placed a hand over her chest. "You didn't see how scared I was." The room tightened. "You didn't see how many times those boys did things like this, not just to me, but to so many of you." A murmur spread. Heads bowed. Students who once pretended not to notice their own bullying memories now felt them rise like ghosts. "You didn't see how it felt to hear adults say they didn't believe us, how it felt to be told we were exaggerating, how it felt to feel invisible in a place where we're supposed to be safe." Her breath quivered, but she kept going. "You didn't see my sister crying next to my body." Zaya's eyes filled instantly. "And you didn't see the moment I woke up and realized that even after everything, my first thought was whether Zaya was safe." Some students wiped away tears. Zuri looked up, scanning the crowd, not accusing, not blaming, just honest. "I'm not here to make you feel sorry for me. I'm here because what happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone. Not for being different, not for standing out, and not because certain people thought no one would ever hold them accountable." She paused, inhaling deeply. "I want you to know, your voice matters. Even when adults ignore you. Even when bullies scare you. Even when it feels like the whole world is stacked against you." Her voice steadied with new determination. "What happened in that hallway didn't break me." She looked at Zaya. "It made us stronger." Zaya nodded through, tears proud, emotional, glowing with sisterly solidarity. "And if I can stand here today," Zuri continued, "after being knocked unconscious, after being lied about, after being ignored, then maybe you can stand up too. For yourself, for your friends, for anyone who's ever felt small." The auditorium shifted. 1 sniffle became 2, 2 became 20. Students wiped their eyes, unashamed, touched by a truth too raw to hide from. Zuri's next words hit even harder. "And for anyone who feels like reporting something won't matter, It will now. Her eyes flicked toward the front row, where the administrators sat, rigid and pale. Because things are going to change. Here. She stepped back slightly, gripping the podium as though it were anchoring her to the earth. Not because of me, but because all of you deserve a school where we're not afraid to walk the hallways, a school where adults listen, where justice isn't optional. Silence. Heavy. Absorbing. Then one student in the third row stood, a tall girl, eyes full of tears. She raised her hand to her chest in quiet solidarity. Another student stood beside her, then another, and another. Within seconds, half the auditorium was on their feet, standing with Zuri. Moments later, the whole room rose a wave of support, compassion, and unity, unlike anything Westbridge had ever seen. Some students sobbed openly. Others clapped through tears. A few teachers wiped their eyes discreetly. For the first time in years, the power that once belonged to the wolf pack had shifted completely, irreversibly back to the students who had lived in their shadows. Zuri exhaled shakily, overwhelmed. This wasn't pity. This wasn't sympathy. This was support. This was strength. This was justice in human form. Across the auditorium, the now disgraced wolf pack watched, silently realizing, perhaps for the first time, that their influence had vanished. Their throne was gone. Their reign was over. As the applause slowly quieted, Principal Ross stepped onto the stage, face pale with guilt, and spoke the words no one expected from a school administrator. I owe all of you, especially Zuri and Zaya, a public apology. The morning sun washed over the courtyard, turning the freshly cut grass into a blanket of shimmering green. The entire school had gathered, teachers in neat lines, parents filling the outer ring, clusters of students buzzing with anticipation. But unlike previous assemblies, this one carried a different weight, a sense of reckoning, renewal, a quiet acknowledgement that Westbridge High had crossed a threshold it could never return from. A temporary stage stood at the front of the courtyard, banners flapping in the soft breeze. On the largest banner were 4 bold words: safe, heard, protected, united. Cade stood at the podium, shoulders squared, presence commanding. He wasn't just a father today, he was the architect of a new foundation, the force correcting everything the school had failed to do. Principal Ross stood beside him, clasping his hands with the humility of a man who had learned his lesson the difficult way. Several teachers lingered behind them, some looking resolute, others uneasy. The courtyard quieted as Cade leaned into the microphone. Today, he began, voice calm yet carrying across the crowd, we aren't here to talk about punishment. We did that already. Today is about rebuilding, relearning, restoring the safety that every student deserves. Students nodded. Parents murmured softly. Even the wind seemed to still. Cade continued, for years, this school allowed silence to win. Complaints disappeared. Victims were ignored. Bullies flourished. And the people who were supposed to protect you, many of them failed. A ripple of tension moved through the faculty rows. But that ends now. He lifted a folder, the new Anti-Bullying and Equity Protection Policy. This policy, he said, tapping its cover, will be implemented district-wide. It includes transparent reporting channels, stricter consequences, external oversight for investigations, and a student advocacy board. Students exchanged looks of surprise. Teachers leaned in. Parents whispered, finally, and I will personally supervise the program until I am certain, Cade added, that every student in this school feels safe walking through these gates. He paused. Not just safe from fists, safe from fear, safe from prejudice, safe from silence. The crowd erupted into applause. When it settled, Principal Ross stepped forward, clearing his throat. As part of this new beginning, he said, voice steady though tinged with regret, several members of our staff have been formally reprimanded for failing to report or address previous bullying incidents. Some teachers stiffened. A few lowered their heads. Students exchanged knowing glances. Everyone had seen the adults who looked the other way. Ross continued, this accountability isn't about punishment alone. It's about rebuilding trust, and ensuring that the students of Westbridge know that the adults around them will listen, truly listen from now on. The applause that followed was softer, this time somber, respectful, necessary. Then Ross stepped aside, and standing behind him were Zuri and Zaya. The courtyard shifted again, this time with a kind of reverence. Students straightened, parents leaned forward, teachers softened. It wasn't dramatized. It wasn't staged. It was genuine. Two sisters, one healing from physical trauma, the other from emotional warfare, walked onto the stage not as victims, but as symbols. Symbols of courage, of survival, of truth spoken until someone finally listened. Zuri's bandage peeked through her curls as she lifted the microphone. "We're not here because we're special," she said softly. "We're here because every student deserves a school where they don't feel alone." Zaya stepped up beside her. "If you see something, say something. Tell someone. Tell us. Because we'll fight for you the way we fought for each other." Students began to clap, slowly, at first, then faster, louder, rising to a full standing ovation that rolled through the courtyard like a wave. Zuri and Zaya looked at each other, two smiles forming small at first, but growing with each cheer that carried their names. Their father watched from the sidelines, pride and relief swelling in his gaze, not because they'd survived, but because they'd transformed, because they now carried a power no bully could ever take away. When the applause finally quieted, Cade stepped back to the podium. "And now," he said with a faint smile, "we move forward. As a school, as a community, as something better than we were yesterday." Behind him, the banner fluttered again. Safe, heard, protected, united. Students began talking excitedly. Teachers exchanged nods. Parents hugged their children a little tighter. And in the middle of the courtyard, Zuri and Zaya were surrounded by classmates, some offering apologies for past silence, others offering thanks for courage they didn't know how to express. The Wolfpack's shadow had dissolved completely. In its place stood something far brighter. For the first time in Westbridge's history, the symbols of strength weren't the feared students, they were Zuri and Zaya, two girls who refused to stay silent. The school buzzed with new energy as rumors spread. A recognition day ceremony was being planned, one that would honor the courage that transformed an entire community. The end-of-year recognition ceremony shimmered with warm lights, fluttering banners, and an atmosphere far brighter than any event Westbridge had ever held. Rows of students filled the seats, dressed in their best. Teachers lined the aisles. Parents gathered proudly near the back. But the air carried something more powerful than celebration. It carried change. A newly built stage stood beneath a canopy of lights, decorated with gold streamers and a large banner reading, "Honoring Courage, Unity and New Beginnings." At the center of the stage waited two awards encased in glass, each engraved with the words, "Bravery Award." No one needed to guess who they were for. Zuri and Zaya stood backstage, fingers intertwined, hearts pounding in nervous excitement. "You ready?" Zaya whispered. Zuri smiled softly, the bruise on her temple now a faint shadow. "With you? Always." Cade stood behind them, adjusting Zuri's collar and smoothing Zaya's hair with fatherly precision. "Whatever happens out there," he said quietly, "you earned this, not because of what you survived, but because of who you became." The girls exchanged a glance, equal parts pride and disbelief. Then the auditorium lights dimmed. Principal Ross stepped to the microphone, his posture formal, but his voice filled with sincerity. "Today," he began, "we honor two young women who reminded us what courage looks like. Through their strength, our school has changed for the better. Through their voices, justice found its place here." Students leaned forward, teachers nodded, parents clasped their hands. "And so," Ross continued, "with great pride, we present the Bravery Award to Zuri and Zaya Cade." A brilliant spotlight illuminated the center of the stage. The curtains parted, and the twins stepped out. The auditorium erupted cheers, applause, whistles echoing off every wall. Some students stood immediately, others after a beat, until the whole room rose in one sweeping motion, a standing ovation. For them, Zuri held back tears as she walked forward. Zaya's smile trembled with emotion. When they reached the podium, Ross handed each girl a crystal plaque, their names etched in silver, glowing under the lights. "Congratulations," he whispered, stepping aside. For a moment, neither sister moved. They simply absorbed the warmth of the room, the recognition, the unity, the freedom of knowing they would never again walk these halls in fear. Then Zuri stepped up to the microphone. "I used to think bravery meant fighting back," she said, voice steady. "But now I know it means standing up even when your voice shakes, even when you feel alone." Zaya stepped forward. "And I used to think silence kept you safe. But now I know silence only protects the wrong people." A hum of agreement flowed through the crowd. The girls looked at each other, then at the students before them. "This award isn't just ours," Zuri added. "It's for everyone who wanted to speak but didn't know how. Now you do. Now you're heard." Applause rose again, not frantic, but warm, grateful, alive. As the girls left the podium, a line of students began forming naturally, one after another, stepping onto the stage, timid but determined. A boy from their math class approached first. "Hey, I should have spoken up earlier," he murmured to Zuri. "I saw them messing with you months ago. I'm sorry." Zuri shook her head gently. "You're speaking now. That matters." Next, a girl from orchestra stepped forward. "I froze that day in the hallway," she admitted. "I'll never freeze again." Zaya clasped her hand. "That's bravery too." More students came. Some whispered apologies, others offered quiet thanks. A few simply hugged them without words. The twins received each gesture with grace, feeling a healing they didn't know they needed. Slowly, the line thinned. The music swelled softly, and Cade approached. He placed his hands on their shoulders, guiding them toward the front of the stage where the whole school could see them. "This," he said softly, "is what justice feels like." Zuri looked up at him. "Bah, are you proud?" He gave a small, soft laugh, the kind that comes only from overwhelming love, more than you will ever understand. He leaned closer, speaking so only the twins could hear. "Justice doesn't arrive late. It arrives the moment we finally stand up and demand it." The words settled into the girls' hearts like seeds, seeds they would carry long after this day. The applause grew louder, rising, rising, rising until it felt like the entire courtyard was vibrating with hope. The lights brightened, the banners rustled, the crowd roared their names. And in the center of the stage, Zuri and Zaya stood tall not as victims, not as survivors, but as symbols of what happens when truth refuses to be silenced. The story of two sisters had ended on that stage, but the movement they sparked would ripple through the school, the district, and far beyond. Long after the applause faded, the twins walked off the stage, free, truly free, for the first time. And just like that, the hallways that once protected bullies finally witnessed their downfall. No more hiding behind lies, no more terrorizing the weak, because one father decided enough was enough, and justice came walking through those doors with his name on it. But tell me, if you were standing in that hallway, would you have stayed silent or stepped in? I want to hear your thoughts. If this story shook you even a little, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need to hear them most.